tell us your
My name
question.
is Raj,
Yes.
and I'm from Northern Virginia. Swamiji, my question is that from a physicist's point of view. What is the status of experimental studies, say using fMRI on meditating Tibetan monk or any monk of Advaita Vedanta? Is there any way to see a pattern in a thing like fMRI on the state that you just described, where the mind is so still that one experiences or understands or comprehends the nature of Paramatma, Brahman?
That question is easily answered because a lot of experimental work has been done. Again, especially because of the Dalai Lama, whom I just mentioned a little while ago. He cooperated with the scientists and set up projects. Papers and books have been written based on the studies of brain activity in monks, the lamas who are long-term meditators, who have been practicing intensively meditation for years or decades. And the results, as far as I remember, there are actually articles published in peer-reviewed journals and books also, is that meditation does have a very significant effect on our well-being. That much. Now, but you are asking something more pointed about actual enlightenment. Can fMRI scans detect something? Yes.
Involved or not?
Yes. Swami Trigunatitananda Maharaj, very interesting, he was a disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, who was actually assassinated in the early part of the 20th century in San Francisco. So he said, before he died, he had said, when I die, preserve my brain, because it was his belief that the brain of a Brahmagyani, of an enlightened person, is significantly different. There will be some differences from other people. Nobody preserved it anyway. But that means he felt that enlightenment and other mystical experiences, whether you call it Brahmagyana, God realization, and there are a whole range of mystical experiences, they should be reflected in brain activity then. There should be some reflection. And that's as long as pure consciousness or consciousness itself has an object. The object is that which is presented to consciousness. Then the mind must be involved there. If the mind is involved, there must be some connection with the brain. So an event like that, a mystical experience, will have some correlation in the brain. So maybe it should be theoretically possible to find something.
Thank you.
That does not mean, however, that pure consciousness is reducible to the brain. That's an entirely different creature altogether. Yeah. I'll come to you. I thought you were going to ask a physics and Vedanta related question. We asked more of a consciousness and science related question. But it's interesting. One little clip I saw online, an interview with the string theorist here in, a very famous string theorist here in Institute of Advanced Studies, Ed Witten. So mostly the interview was about physics and string theory. But the interviewer asked him, what about consciousness? Do you think we will understand how the brain produces consciousness? And his answer was, he's apparently a very soft-spoken man, and his answer was very moderate, quietly spoken, but very incisive. What he said was, I think as neuroscience progresses, we will learn more and more about the brain, but consciousness will remain a mystery. Because, he didn't explain because, but the point being that consciousness is not reducible to the brain. Why this is important is, some people ask me sometimes, oh, so you are saying that neuroscience is, then we should stop doing neuroscience if we can't understand consciousness? No, as he said, if you do more and more neuroscience, you'll understand more about the brain and more about many, many things about the mind. So it's extremely valuable. One must go on. But I don't think you'll find an answer to how or why consciousness is there associated with the brain. again, a physics-related point which came to mind was I was reading this book by an Italian physicist, Carlo Rovelli. He writes very lyrically, very nice writing. I mean, he makes it very appealing for lay people. So one of his recent books, Helgoland, about quantum physics. And it's so interesting. He's talking about what does it mean. Quantum physics is true, it's real, it works, everybody accepts. It's already established mainstream science. But what it means for our picture of reality, there are multiple interpretations. And he says in that book, when I talk about these things, people keep asking me, once in a while people ask me, have you read Nagarjuna? You should read Nagarjuna. And then he says, finally I decided that I should see what is this Nagarjuna. So Nagarjuna was this great Buddhist master who lived more than 2,000 years ago. The doctrine of emptiness is, I mean, the terms were used by the Buddha, but the doctrine of emptiness, the philosophy of emptiness is attributed to Nagarjuna and Chandrakirti and others afterwards. So anyway, in that book, Carlo Rovelli says, when I read Nagarjuna, it is nearly 2,000 years ago, this Buddhist master in ancient India, and he read it with J. Garfield's commentary. J. Garfield is the professor of Madhyamaka Buddhism under whom I studied. So he says, it was a revelation for me. It's exactly what we are trying to say, the worldview. He's very clear. He says, I'm not saying that Nagarjuna knew quantum mechanics. He didn't. But the worldview that he had, the way he tried to understand the world as a network of interdependent relationships and nothing substantial beyond that, is almost exactly what one interpretation of quantum mechanics is, which is the one he favors. Anyway, just thought I would put it out there. I was excited about it. So I wrote to my professor, J. Garfield, said, do you know this quantum mechanic, the quantum physicist has written about you in his book? And he says, yes, we are in touch and we're going to do a program together about it.